Microeconomics versus macroeconomics. Okay, let's review a little bit from lecture one. We defined economics using a couple of basic assumptions. We assumed that individuals have infinite wants and that they fulfill those wants by being economically rational, that is, by applying cost-benefit analysis. We can take that definition and we can apply it at two levels, the microeconomic level and the macroeconomic level. Microeconomics, which is studied in Economics 202, is the study of the economic behavior of consumers and firms in the market for a single good. But what is a market? Well, in a basic sense, we define a market as where, loosely defined, the buyers and sellers of a single good get together. But what do we mean by that, where buyers and sellers get together? It could be a physical space, like the farmer's market that is shown in the picture here, where people are buying and selling apples. Or it could be a virtual space. You go on Amazon and you sign up for the delivery of a carton of apples. That would also be a market. We can also use the term market to define the place, quote unquote, where all the sales of a single good nationwide take place. So we talk about the US market for apples. That is, all of the apples that are changing hands in the United States. Another way we can break down the levels in defining a market is by redefining the good slightly. We can talk about there being a market for apples in a particular place or nationwide. Or we can talk about there being a market for red apples. Or we could talk about there being a market for Jonathan apples, which is a particular breed of red apples that's really good for making apple pies. Another way we can break down goods and services in different ways is by distinguishing between final and intermediate goods. We distinguish between markets for final goods and for intermediate goods, where final goods are those goods that are purchased by consumers for their own consumption. Intermediate goods, on the other hand, are goods that are purchased by producers to make other goods. For example, apples can be a final good when they are sold to be eaten, or they can be an intermediate good when they're sold in some sort of wholesale way to be used to make apple pies. Car tires can be a final good when they're purchased by a consumer to replace the tire on their car. Or they can be an intermediate good when manufacturers buy them in bulk to put them on the cars that they're producing that will then be sold to consumers. Okay, that's a repeat. All right, so that's basically what how microeconomic markets are defined. Macroeconomics, on the other hand, focuses on the economy as a whole. We aggregate or sum production across all markets for every type of good across the entire country. The total of all that production is called gross domestic product, which will be discussed actually not so much in this course, but in a later course if you take Economics 201. Macroeconomics studies the total or aggregate production of all goods and services. And the reason we do that is because it allows us to determine whether the economy is growing or not. It would be really hard to do that if you were looking at apples and car tires and all the other possible goods. But when you combine them all together, then you could talk about, is the economy bigger or not? It also allows us to devise policies that the government can use to promote growth, which would be really hard if you had to worry about how does this policy promote growth in the apple market, how does it promote policy production in the in the car market, but you talk about all the aggregated goods in the economy. How are we promoting growth in the economy? In this course, we'll stick to microeconomics, the study of markets for a single good. If you want to study macroeconomics, that's covered in Economics 201.